Oh, it works now. Okay, I think it works. Okay, let me check. Okay. All right, test. Okay. Hopefully it works. Okay. Okay. Does this make sense? This derivative is okay, I think. What's the derivative of this with respect to A1? Huh? We set this thing hoping equal to 0. And we're solving for what? What are we solving for? A1, right? We're trying to find out optimal A1.
So the reason why
Uh-huh.
because you take the in the derivative of A1 is just 1, right? That's
Sorry?
why I'm thinking of the chain rule.
Yeah, yeah. Here, you mean? Or here?
There and at the beginning.
Yeah, yeah. You're taking the, so this is like
You take the derivative of the whole thing and you take the derivative of
just the thing inside, right?
the thing itself is 1.
Yeah, exactly. The thing
Yeah.
inside is 1, because it is the same. Exactly. Similarly here. Yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, the derivative of like,
Yeah.
squared. This would be
So
like,
that would be 2x plus 3 times 2.
yeah, that. There's, I guess that's right. Okay, great. All right, maybe I'll just divide all the 2's away to make it simpler. Minus A1 minus 1. B R A1 minus B R A1 minus A2 equals 0. Maybe I'll put all the A1's on one side, maybe? Let's do all the sides, maybe. Minus A1 plus 1 minus RA1 plus B RA1 minus BRA1 plus BRA2 0. You got some cancellations, right? Yeah, yeah, these things go away, right? Yeah. So I have negative A1 plus 1 minus RA1 plus BRA2. So and I'm solving for A1, right? So maybe I'll put all the A1s in. So this is 1 plus BRA2 equals what? A1. Well, yeah, so this is the same as 1 plus 1. Yeah,
Times 1 minus
yeah,
1
exactly.
plus
Right. So therefore,
So A1
equals
is 1 plus
I think it's right. Hopefully it's right. There we go.
You could also factor the 1 plus
Huh? No, no. Okay, good. I think that's what I got. That's what I got? Yeah, that's what I got. Okay, cool. All right. This is the best response of A1 in response A2, right? Okay. Just to make sure, how do I know I can do this first order condition and it works? Huh?
Take the second.
Well, yeah, you could take the second derivative, but you just know that anytime you have a quadratic loss, it looks fine. There's none of this kind of up and down. It just looks like this. So it's okay. It's convex for concave. Concave looks like a convey, like a cave. And then convex is like e to the x. That's how I remember.
Wait, how do you remember it?
You know, e to the x. Exponential. Yeah. Sometimes people say concave down, concave up, which is also confusing. So this is concave down.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That's what
All right, this is the best response. How do I find equilibrium? Same thing for what? A2, right? So if I did the same thing for A2, what would I get? You're saying don't, it's symmetric, right?
You get
So
the same thing.
same thing.
1 plus BR A1.
All right, so now what do I do? Yeah, exactly. We just solve these. Yeah, exactly. Now the math goes like so. I put these together. I get A1 So, I guess I'll write it down. So 1 over 1 plus r times 1 plus br a2, right, which is this. Okay. I think it's right. Plus br. Okay. All right. I'm going to bring my 1 plus r on this side. Should I do? Maybe I'll multiply 1 by 1 plus r again, just to make, it's always good to get rid of fractions. Now 1 plus r times this is just 1 plus r, right? Okay. Let's see. Okay, I think it's right, huh? I think it's okay. Kind of feeling a little iffy actually. Hold on a second.
What are we trying to isolate here? Sorry?
I'm just trying to find A1, right? We're just solving for
Solve
A1.
for A1.
And so the A1 is
So we can
this.
subtract it and then factor it out.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm hoping that there'll be some cancellations. But maybe there won't be.
Oh.
Because when I did it before, there was a cancellation. 1 plus 3, A1 is 1 over 1 plus R times 1 plus BR. A2 is must be over A1. Mine is right. Then maybe we should just go ahead and see what happens.
Can we see A1 parentheses in the third line?
Here?
Yeah. Should be BR times A1 is BR A1? No?
Okay, so going from here to here?
Yeah. So we multiply 1 plus BR times 1 plus BR A1.
Okay,
There.
from here to here, I'm just multiplying both sides by 1 plus R.
Yeah.
So this becomes this. This 1 becomes 1 plus R. This thing becomes BR times the numerator. Maybe I'm okay. I don't know why I'm hesitating.
Is it?
Maybe it's okay, huh? Go ahead. Okay, maybe, I solved it in another way before, so
Well, let's see if this works.
let's see if it works. Okay,
It doesn't roll.
exactly. Then we'll go back. I think we're okay though. I don't think I've made a mistake. I'm just, huh?
Can you simplify, like, if you bring the BR squared A1 to the other side, and then, like,
Yeah.
you have
Yes,
the-
nice.
Oh yeah, okay,
and
sure.
you can, like, factor that out.
Oh yeah, okay, I got you. Okay. So this is going to be 1 plus R. Well, I'm going to expand this, right? I should expand it.
Yeah, maybe that one.
I don't think.
Oh no?
You don't need, should we wait though?
This is what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Because then you can divide, right?
Yeah. Oh, so in some sense we're almost there. We just have to. Can we simplify this stuff? The whole.
Because then that is like how A squared minus B squared is just A plus B times A
Right.
minus B squared.
Oh, right. Oh, I got you. So you don't want to expand this. You want to make this like an. Oh, very good. That's good.
Are you a math major or something? You should be up there, right?
Exactly, right? So this is that form. Very good. So this is the same thing as 1 plus R minus BR times 1 plus R plus BR. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, very good. Plus R plus BR. That works. Okay, good. We don't have to expand. So then, do you see how this works? Okay, good. So then I have A1 is just what? 1 over 1 plus R minus B. Okay. All right, great. I was worried about having to, in my mind I was thinking, I'm going to have to expand this and there's going to be like lots of little R squared terms floating around, but it's good to get rid of. Excellent. And I think what's A2 going to be? We just substitute it, right? So this is going to be, well, it's actually going to be equal, right? Because it's fully symmetric, but we can put it like 1 over 1 plus R times 1 plus B RE1. Okay. This is going to be 1 plus R. I'm going to put everything on the common number 1 plus R minus BR. That's the 1, right? And then, oh, I'm sorry, it's hard to see. I think this is just now 1 over 1 plus R. This is just 1 plus R. 1 plus R minus BR. It's the same as, that's the same as this. Okay, so I think we're okay. Yeah. But when I did it at home, I just went from here and said A1 is equal to A2 and just solved it that way. That's you can do that. Okay, so anyway, this is the answer. Okay, so the answer is going to be, it wasn't that hard. Okay, it's like, so if I don't know, I'm going to just choose 0. And if I do know, I'm going to choose, what is it? 1 over 1 plus. That's what that looks like. And it's really this. That's what you do. That's it. Yeah. Okay. Now let's interpret this. What if R is 0? Yeah, it's just 1. Right, exactly. This number is just 1. So if R is 0, it means that there's no interaction. It's not much of a game. Like you don't really, everyone's just doing their own thing. You don't care about the other person. So therefore, if you see the odds open move, you just move to it. No big deal. There's no, it's not interesting. Okay. What if R is really large? So the opposite. Like 100 or something like that. B is a probability, remember? Okay, so
if the probability is low, then it's just R. If it's high, then it's basically what, 0?
right. So exactly. So okay. So let's think about it first of all. If B is 1, so let's do B is 1 first. If B is 1, that means you know for sure the other person knows also. If B is 1, then this denominator becomes 1, right? So if you R is 0, this is 1. But also if B is 1, it's also 1, which means if you know for sure the other person knows, then you just go up to the other one. Then it is common knowledge for sure. Okay. All right. Now let's think. If R is super large, like 100, and B is kind of not too close to 1, what does this number look like? So if R is 100 and B is still 1, then it will be 1.
Yeah. I mean, it gets closer to 100. It gets closer to R. The smaller B is closer to R.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Denominator.
Yeah, exactly. So exactly, the smaller the B is, this denominator becomes larger, right? As R increases, what happens to the denominator? It gets bigger, right? What does that mean? Okay, so say we stick B equals a half, that means you have probably half you think the person is. If you stick B as a half, as R increases, this number becomes lower. What does that mean? It means that as R increases, that means you care more about the other person. That means the shadow of the past is larger in some sense. Okay? Because this number is lower. In other words, the larger R is, the more you care about the other person, the more the. Now you know that the dictator is dead, but you're worried about the past because you think the other person might not know. See what I'm saying? The greater the more you care about the person, the greater conformity, the more the past affects you. It's sort of holding you back. See what I'm saying? Why is that? So if R were 0, then this would be 1. There would be no holding back at all. Right? As soon as you know, if R is 1, is that what you said? Yeah. Sorry, if R is 0, this is 1. Right? If R is 0, there's no interaction. As soon as you learn about the dictator, you're there. Okay? As soon as you learn that, oh, gay marriage is thing, I'm there. Okay. If R is larger and larger and larger, it slows you down a little bit. So even though you know the dictator is dead, you're thinking, oh, I know the dictator is dead, and I'm pretty sure my friend knows too, but I'm really concerned that I don't want to be too far away from that person. So therefore, and I'm thinking also that person might be thinking the same way that me, etc., etc., etc. So that's the interpretation of this thing. Okay, so let me show you how that looks like on the thing. So, just my mathematical thing. Okay, so this is, I'm just graphing, I guess I put it, oh, I'll put it, see, I'll make it an R. That's this. Okay, so if R is 0, then your choice, this is just showing the, A, your just choice is 1. And you're right there already. Okay. This working? Okay. Oh, maybe I should. Okay. I think I'll do this. Oh, look at this one. Okay. We're having this kind of infinite loop kind of thing going on. It's kind of interesting. Yeah. Okay. If R is 0, then you just choose 1. What happens is R increases a little bit. Say R is like, so you care a little bit about your friend. This means you find out about the dictator and you think, well, I'm not going to go all the 1 because I think that my friend might know. Okay? As a function of B, it's going 6. As my belief that the other person knows that it goes to 1, then of course I will know it. So this will always end at 1. Like just like what I said before. If B is 1, you'll always just choose 1. You know for sure. What happens when R increases? It looks more and more like this. So here, you know about it, but you're not sure the other person knows. You're pretty sure the other person doesn't know about it. Okay? Then you only move a little bit. Okay? But you still end up at 1. So as R increases, your action is a function of your belief the other person knows, kind of decreases more and more, right? So what's going on here? So you know that the dictator is dead. You're not really sure if you're going to go to the street. Now you think, well, maybe 10% of the people knows that. But I'm thinking still that's not enough, 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%. Still, you know, I know that, so a given person, I think, has probability that they think the dictator is dead. But they might be thinking, oh, you know, they're not sure, but other people, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? So each person knows that 50% of the other people know that the dictator is dead, but everyone's kind of like, oh, well, what does that mean? Then only when you go reach like 80 or 90%, you say, okay, now I'm going to do it. Okay? So the idea is that the greater R is, the more kind of all or nothing it becomes. Okay? Which I think makes sense. Right? It's kind of the greater kind of mobilization you need. It's kind of like, so people always say things like, you know, oh, that mobilization in like Romania or something, like Ceausescu, you know, all of a sudden it went from everyone loving Ceausescu to Ceausescu being shot. Okay? So people say, wow, what a crazy thing. But when you think about it, it couldn't happen any other way, right? If it's going to happen all at once. It's not going to happen slowly, right? So it's actually not surprising. It's very sudden, but the suddenness is what it had to be. Yeah, exactly, right? It would never be not sudden. Similarly like this, right? You'd either just, everyone's going to hang back, or if they're going to do it, they're only going to do it if they're sure almost every other person's on board, right?
Unless the contagion has to do with something else, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless, yeah. But,
Right.
But here,
Exactly, so,
in this model, for sure, yeah.
right, so yeah, it's like, we assume that everyone has the same R, the whole thing, right? So like if it's a different kind of problem, like say that, maybe there's a theory about this, like say that like there's some other problem which is like something milder, like maybe not actually going to the square or something, or just like shouting some slogan or something. Maybe with that, the R is a little bit less or something. You know, I don't know. So you can think about, you know, how this graph might be different for different R's or different people, or like a network kind of thing. Maybe if I have friends who are close to me.
But when you still think about R being smaller or large, if the concern is like the cover that people get by being part of moving that's larger,
Yeah.
rather than smaller, sort
Well,
of, yeah.
I mean, strictly speaking, we're over-interpreting, like,
Sure.
so like, we just have two people in this model,
Yeah.
and we're just saying R is simply how much you care about people that like their person.
Right.
Yeah, so you can maybe think about it in terms of public opinion or something, I don't know exactly, but the nice thing about this is it does very simply get at this thing, which I'm trying to do. So maybe the majority is just some sort of mass public, political visualization is weak. Anyway, that's what I'm trying to do. Right? So, anyway, so again, pretty simple. So let me show you some pictures now. So this is a paper I'm trying to write. Let's see, what does the date say? I don't know. It's depressing to look at your old papers. 2018. So like, so yeah. So a person may have finished their PhD at the same time that I started writing this paper. And so this paper is basically this model. So I have this thing. There's a status quo or this. Okay, so you both don't know. And this is the same thing we just did. Right? So makes sense?
It's the exact same, like we were reading that paper about.
Revolutions?
Yeah.
It's very similar to the revolution.
Oh, interesting. Okay, cool. Which paper is that?
I can't think of the author's name, right, but it was a similar idea of that.
Is it Timur Kuran?
Give me a second.
Is it Timur Kuran?
It was on,
Uh-huh.
the one I'm thinking of was on the east.
Eastern European revolutions.
Oh, okay,
The
okay.
idea that your decision to participate in the revolution is
Right.
based on your like beliefs about other people's decision
Oh,
to
cool.
participate. So it was
Okay.
a similar kind of idea to this.
Okay, okay. Maybe,
It was in the CP seminar.
oh, okay. Maybe if you send me the site.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Anyway, so this is my huh?
No, it was Quran 1991.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, so that idea is kind of present in that paper. So the thing about his paper is a little bit famous, but there's some conceptual issues with that paper which I disagree with. So, but it's still kind of getting the same idea, which is like people hold back what there's. So his whole thing is about people holding back what they say,
Right.
right? So here there's no action, there's no decision about what to say so much. But I guess you could put it in there. Like maybe this is, you could think of this as expressing an opinion. You express an opinion based on your belief of other people sharing the same opinion. So you could do that. Okay. All right. So in this model, in this paper, I make it a little more general. So if you look at like A1 and A2, they're just quadratic functions. So basically, you could say that in general, this is a quadratic thing, and the R is kind of like the C. Okay, the C is like this is basically complementarity. How much? So if C is positive, that means like R is positive. It's like I want to be like you. But if C could be negative, then it means like I want to do something other than you. Anyway, okay. So I have this. So I solve the equilibrium, which is just. Oops. Yeah. So this is just equilibrium. This is actually just a more general format where there's more variables, but it's just the same as what we just did here. It's just literally the same thing. It's not a big deal. Anyway, so let me just show the pictures. This is similar. So this is like kind of what I just showed you, right? So if there's positive complementarity, which is like a revolution or something like that, then once I learn about it, I'm going to move a little bit. This was my R. Then only when I know a lot of people know the same thing will I move to the eventual. This is, so to speak, negative complementarity. What does that mean? This is a situation where, what do you like think about it as like a oligopoly, like a Cornell oligopoly, which means you and I are selling some goods, and say that all of a sudden the demand goes up a lot. In this case, if you produce less, I want to produce a ton more. If you kind of capture that market. In that case, if you produce a lot, I'm not going to produce a lot. I produce less. So this is kind of, so in this case, if there's negative complementarity, it turns out that you will kind of overshoot to where the equilibrium will be reached. Anyway, let's just stick to this. Okay, so, all right. So what am I doing? So I'm trying to model now. The whole point is we're modeling not just when you know, but we're not modeling not just whether you know, but when you know, what are your beliefs are about what other people know. Okay? That's the whole thing we're trying to get at. Right? It's not just, I know that the dictator's dead, but I have to make, when I know, how many other people do I believe also know that? So the way I model it is pretty simple, which is, say that in time one, we're going to say this person knows. So this person knows that they know. Say 1 person 4 meet. When they meet, then both 1 and 4 know that 1 and 4 know. So it's like you meet somebody and they tell you the news, but they also tell you, oh, I talked to so and so and so, and they told me they know also. Okay, so that's okay. So then after this, so after 1 and 4 meet, then they know that they both know. Say 2 and 4 meet now. 1, 2, and 4. Exactly. See, so as time goes on, the news of it spreads, but also each person knows that more people know. Makes sense? So early on, there's like a few people who know, and they only know like a handful of other people know. But as they get more and more, not only do more people know, but also all the people who know that all more people know. So in some sense, if you got informed at the end, you might get informed that everyone knows all of a sudden. So you literally don't know anything, but then somebody comes to you and say, hey, me and 50 of my friends know, because I've heard. Okay. So this is kind of, so again, it's not just showing you how many people, so this is what this looks like over time. So what is going on here? This is the number of people, this is like a little scatter plot. This is the number of people who don't know. This is the number of people who know and think that 20% of the people of the world know. So there's 5 people. So this is the thing. So when those 2 people meet, then this is the 1 and 4. Then now 2 people know that 40% of the population knows. So this is 5. So at this point, everyone knows, but some people think that only 40% of the people know. Make sense? That's what this means. So that's what I'm trying to get at with this. So I just simulated. So again, so this is if I just do a more elaborate one with like 20 people. When you just what happens is, so starting from here. As long as it's not
They'll make the musical chairs.
yeah, exactly. They need art chairs. Okay, here, this is the number of people who do not know. By this time, almost everyone knows. Okay? But a lot of people, so this person knows that everyone knows. But a lot of people think, this person thinks, oh, I think 60% of the people know. These people think over 40%. So there's quite a broad range. If you go around at this time period of time, if you go and ask somebody, hey, do you know the dictator's dead? They will say, yeah. And you ask them, well, how many other people in the world do you think that? They'll say, well, I think maybe 1/3. Some people say, oh, I think 2/3. So it's natural that there will be a variance like this. Okay, as time goes on, that more and more people talk to you, and eventually almost everyone knows that everyone knows. So that's my little model. You can do it another way. Anyway, so then once you have this picture, you can just stick this into this thing. Okay, see you later. Okay. Okay, let me see if I can find something. Okay, so this is the public, so I think of it as public opinion. This is this example we just did. Okay, when we solve for, again, that's this. This is simply, so for a given R, and then you just stick B in all those things. So this person has a B of 0.2, for example. Right. Okay, so if R is 0, now this is the scatter plot of the action. Remember, when R is 0, you go straight to 1 if you know, because you don't care about any interaction. Right? So, as you know, so this is based on the graph. So, and this is based on this. So we're assuming this is the process by which people's beliefs change. Okay, if R is 0, anytime you move away from this, you just go straight to 1. Okay, so this is kind of like a logistic, like I wrote over there. There's no interaction, there's no game theory at all. It's just you learn about it, and then once you learn about it, you just read it. This little line is supposed to be the mean action. The mean action just goes. Okay, all right. Now what about R equals 1? So now there's some interaction. So now once you learn, you go to 0.5. Because R's 1 means that you care equally between your friend and your ideal. Once you learn and you think that no one else knows, well, you think probability you're basically sort of going halfway between what your ideal point is. Okay, hold on here. If you think that no one else knows, you think that almost anybody will need to be at 0, right? And you think your own ideal point is 1, so you're going to split the difference half-half. So therefore just conform. Okay. So then it looks like this. Now, as people more and more know, they so it's not like here where they go straight to 1. These people all know they're still shading because they're thinking, oh, I'm not sure other people know. These people know, and they know that more and more people know, so they shade less. So then you have this picture. This line is the mean. What's the point of this mean? Now, if you look at mean opinion, it moves much more slowly than in this case. And if you go to r equals 5, then it's even slower. Okay? And I think kind of like, so the implication is like, if we're transitioning from one equilibrium to the other, we will eventually reach this. But the greater the r, the greater the interdependence, the longer it takes. That's all. It takes far longer than, so at this point, like almost everyone knows, but still the mean is kind of down here because everyone's thinking, oh, everyone knows, but I'm still like thinking, I'm not sure that other people know, blah, 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 blah. So that's kind of it. I mean, so then this is the empirical part of the talk, or the paper, which is pretty limited, so one of the interesting things about same-sex marriage is that the acceptance of it was much delayed relative to acceptance of people having same-sex relationships. So if you ask people like, do you think gay people are okay? A lot of people said that was fine in the 90s, but a lot of people at that time, almost no one said same-sex marriage was okay. So why is that? What's the difference between approving of, like, same-sex, right?
A lot of states still criminalize sodomy.
Oh, I guess that's true.
To be clear.
Well, so this is my
But yeah.
this is my little graph from what I find on the web. So this is same-sex sexual relations. You're right. Sexual relations between those same-sex is not wrong at all. So they asked that question back in the 80s and 90s, and like around this time, it started going up.
15 states. Technically criminalized.
Yeah, I guess even here we're like at 50%. But still, maybe there's a hard.
There's a Supreme Court case that struck down sodomy.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
right.
2006.
Yeah.
I want to say.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, Obergefell or something like that.
Yeah,
No,
it's
it was Texas.
2003.
Okay.
Lawrence was
Lawrence, okay. Yeah. Okay, so what I'm saying is, I'm not sure if this is true, but so this is the same-sex marriage is not even an aspect of it. My argument is that this increased more quickly than this. If we made it's actually not true with data. I was really hoping that would be the case.
I think that even if the court says something that actually will change.
Yeah. Maybe that's kind of like.
Especially abortion.
Yeah.
So how do you interpret the difference in like the R between the two cases?
My interpretation, the R is positive here and 0 here. That is,
But like, what does R represent in this case, I guess?
my interpretation is that if someone asks you whether you approve of, same-sex, sex with a person of the same sex is not wrong at all. That's just your opinion. You're not saying that you don't have to worry about whether that conforms to another person. But if it's about marriage, then it's more about a social norm. Right? Marriage is a norm, something which is valued. So therefore, being in favor of same-sex marriage is different, has a higher R than just being in favor of sex. That's kind of my idea. I don't know. It's not really borne out too well, to be honest. But anyway. But that was kind of the idea. So, in the back of my mind, this is what I'm thinking.
It's hard with surveys though, regardless, right? Because
Yeah.
surveys are always this expression of there's always a social desirability bias.
Yeah, I guess
It's
so,
always
yeah.
an expression of of something that you
Right.
have some degree of hearsay that people will
Right.
figure out, like approve or disapprove, right?
Right, that's true.
Like could a better, I don't know about better, could another case be like looking at some revealed behavior and not saying that's when you
Oh,
know
I
R
see
is
what
near
you're-
zero.
I see what you're-
Like,
In a sense, would social desirability kind of speak to this then, right? 'Cause it's the reason you see a lower rate, in some sense, they have some desirability. There's less desirability bias of the thing that's more than just their own opinion, but maybe there's more desirability bias.
I
Huh.
just think that like a survey is going to have some minimal, it's never going to be zero, it's always going to be like,
Right. The desirability
Floor.
speaks to what this is about, when you're thinking
Yeah.
about what other people are thinking of, or what they expect to be said.
Right.
So it plays into the model.
Yeah.
Is there like something that's the opposite of social desirability? Like I'm embarrassed to say this is an opinion because it's due to the
I think that's the same thing though, right?
Like a negative social.
Well, I mean,
But you don't want to express the unpopular opinion. There's, it's the inverse.
no, but you can think so, like,
What do
some,
you care about?
somebody wants to be like a naysayer or something like that, or that would be the opposite, right? Like somebody wants to be like devil's advocate or something, like, yeah.
Also, it's socially desirable to protest, but it's great for some risk.
Yeah, I mean, I think the protest thing is not about social desirability, that's an actual practical thing, like, I think. You know, you don't want to be there alone, kind of, no? I don't know. I think social desirability is real, I mean, but anyway, in the back of my mind, this is why,
Is still working paper?
yeah. So this is why, we see a rapid change in attitudes in gay-same-sex marriage, essentially it is. Like, people will just wait until they think almost everyone feels that some way, and then they'll be, okay, fine. You know, and so, anyway, yeah, so that's it. And,
Well, if the risks are really high, then the rewards are really high.
right, that's the idea.
You want to make sure that everyone else.
Right. That's the idea. But I'm trying to think of other examples too, which is other than same-sex marriage or other.
Russia.
Huh?
And Russia is, I think, a good example right now. Right?
What do you mean?
Yeah, people protesting for Russia.
Yeah.
Occasionally this won't happen all at once, because many Russian citizens assume other people will drive them.
Right.
Right.
I think something that reminded me of that, I thought an example you were saying about acting, so I think maybe you can compare it to a chat, right? Like, if you're in a big group,
Right.
someone starts chatting, it's just really fast nowadays.
Oh, right. Okay. I was once actually in a it was in a big impromptu kind of demonstration. It was a city hall in LA. And some people were chanting over here, some people were chanting over here. You could actually see people kind of like picking up on the chant. You could see people who were in the middle had a big advantage for one thing. It was literally like, that was like a social network in my, like, I was just like looking at it. And, because there was no leader, there was like some people chanting over here, they're saying, like, there's people here. And then one person won because they were louder. So. If I had I guess I had my cell phone, I should have just videoed it at the time. It was interesting.
I remember I worked this once, and I just didn't want to, because they were saying that if they catch your car, you're going into trouble. So I just went with someone and had them drop me off.
Oh, I see.
So they could catch the license.
Oh, very good.
But when I got there, they were loud, so I felt pretty safe.
Now you have to worry
The
about.
police came and started shooting everyone.
I mean, they were there before.
I just-
Now you have to worry. You have to worry about.
They usually, the police usually do.
I see.
So at any protest, they make sure they're the first people there.
Oh.
So the first people that come are kind of like they're afraid and they leave.
Oh, I see.
So in Saudi Arabia, I mean, this is kind of like a very sad story. There was a guy that saw a Facebook post during their spring in Saudi Arabia and said, okay, I'm going to attend. Anyway, he goes there and there's no one there, no one. It's just a BBC reporter and so many police, and then he just meets with the BBC reporter and says, my name is this, I'm a teacher. Like, he gives her all his personal information, says, please put this out because I don't know what's going to happen to me after I go, because I'm the only one here. There's no other suspect, you know?
Oh my
And
gosh.
just, after they tried to call him, he just couldn't get in touch with him.
Good grief.
It's Saudi Arabia is like, it's almost like North Korea. It's just an open country. They can do their travel and stuff, but the government's pretty brutal and stuff.
Wow. Couldn't he have like showed up and then sort of gradually walked backward or something? Like he felt he.
When he arrived, he just like, he owned it.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
impressive.
He was pretty like, he was one of the people that had least to lose on attending.
No, I see.
This person who was like really high value on expressing their personal thoughts.
Oh.
True. Scary stuff. There's even some, there's like Russian, they're like, I think they're teenagers, they're like, Molotov cocktail, like these recruit centers and that shit.
Right.
There's been reports.
I see.
I think they're trying to do it in secret.
Now you have to worry about the facial recognition software being used on you or something like that.
It's true.
You know? I don't know.
Wear a mask.
In Kuwait, they tried to do something the same, but they stopped it. After we had a bombing, like a terrorist bombing in Kuwait, and they used that to start like a national DNA registry everyone had to register like a piece of their DNA, physical,
Yeah.
Oh.
not just the fingerprints. You had to do a swab and stuff, and anyone had to represent you as well. And they were going to start doing it, but I think the UN intervened.
Oh, I see.
It's like, is it like fingerprints though? Like basically, like what is it?
So they were literally trying to. People were worried that they would be able to map out all familial relations in the country. I think that's just too much power.
I see.
And they were also, some people were saying that the state, like, because before that happened, the state, based on like flimsy evidence, revoked opposition figures' citizenship, so they can't have nationality. So people were worried that the state might kind of, say, oh, this is your father.
Right.
But they're lying.
Oh, I see.
You have to
Wow.
imagine that there's some knowledge of whose public relationships even about that, I guess, but I guess DNA helps, yeah.
Wasn't there a case of like some U.S. police agency, they had a DNA sample, so it was something like, they were able to track somebody by the DNA sample of the person's brother or something like that. It was on Ancestry.com or something like that.
Are you talking about some in Singapore?
Yeah, something
Like the
like,
Golden State Killer?
yeah. There was something like that. They didn't have the suspect's DNA, but they're able to know
Right.
something about their relatives or something. Yeah, and the relatives had consented to give their DNA to Ancestry.com or something.
I guess it could all be subpoenaed in theory, right? It's even a private company has this stuff.
Yeah, exactly right.
It's part of an active case.
Was the idea that they caught them through some kind of DNA test later?
No, I think-
If
okay.
you know who the brother is, you know who they are.
Yeah, exactly. I think I remember now. It's like you find DNA from the scene, you create say this is a person, and then you put it on Ancestry.com, and some people say, hey, Ancestry.com, said that you and I are relatives.
It's 99% match me, but it's not me. and it's
Right, exactly, right.
the brother.
Right. But the other people who put their DNA, it wasn't like a consent issue because the other people, consented, like the relatives. So like, if I'm consenting for, I'm not consenting for all my relatives, but like just the fact that I'm not, that makes it easier to find my relatives.
Even if I don't put my DNA into some kind of like database,
Yeah.
if my brother or someone else does, it's as good as it being in there.
Yeah, exactly, right.
Indirect, frightening thing to know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. They have a lot of the gerrymandering. Sure.
Hopefully draws the conclusion.
I'm curious, I guess, when you submit a paper like this, where it's, being through your formal model, like, how do reviewers kind of critique something like this?
It depends. But there's a lot of things you can say. People will say, "Oh, I don't believe this aspect of it. This might be covered in another paper. I mean, how original is it? How general is it?" They might sometimes say, "I don't think this is wrong or this is sloppy." So I think this is pretty tight in terms of the derivation. This is a pretty simple model, but I have sometimes people say, "Oh, that was not correct," or "This is unclear." Once I did submit a paper with a mistake in it, so people caught it, which is good. But yeah, it's all about kind of applicability, whether it's a new result.
Is it more like, does this match real world phenomena?
A little bit,
Or
but-
more like this is the formal model isn't?
It's sort of, I guess, what I would always say is that like if it matches something real world, then that's great, because not too many models do that directly. Some do, but if it doesn't do that, then it's about kind of how general is it? Is it really a new phenomenon you're locating? How sometimes models themselves are interesting just intrinsically. Arrow's theorem or something like that, or some of the things we did. It might not even have a direct relationship to reality, but just say, "Oh, I didn't think about that." That's in this little world of the model, that's also kind of surprising. So that's also part of it too. So you might get something like, "Oh, this follows very immediately from the assumptions," for example. So the best models, don't put in very much and you get a lot out. Like Prison's Limit is like that. I mean, Prison's Limit is truly something which you can explain, but it really has kind of a deep result. So that's the best thing. The weaker models are things like you throw in 100 things and you get like 2 things out, that kind of thing. So, ideally you want to have, kind of a bang for the buck kind of thing. But it's very subjective. In that sense, it's, running a paper based on data is a little kind of easier in some sense. Not that I've done it a lot, but that's my perception. It's even in economics, which is getting more empirical all the time, even like in the 90s, still not too many, the modal person did regressions. That's, the modal economist just looked at data and said, and so, I don't know, everyone has a different opinion. My feeling is kind of like, our value added as social scientists is not just looking at data, but kind of trying to find and test new mechanisms, new kinds of causal kind of relationships. And so like I was talking to my son about that, he said, well, it's not like we don't have enough of those things already. We have a hard time distinguishing the ones we do have. It's not like we need more, but I will say, no, I think we could use more, because if you have a new kind of mechanism that allows you to think about the world in a different way, and, like, so, I don't know. So I think, like this whole thing about common knowledge and stuff, I think it's real. When I first started doing it, people like thought it was not real. They just totally dismissed the entire idea. This whole idea of it being important that people know what other people know. So I think it's real, and I think that it's good that the idea is out there. So, but it's hard to say. Everyone's different. If you do an experiment, it's always great. Because that's always new data. You can always publish something with new data. And I think one of my friends said, there's basically 3 ways to make a contribution: new data, which includes archives, experiments, new models, i.e. new mechanisms, or new statistical techniques. So that's kind of the thing. So even in like political theory, it's the same sort of thing. Like you could do a new text, a new way of thinking about a text, or a new technique of analyzing a text. It's sort of the same thing, and so I don't know. It's hard. So, but that's what we're trying to do. Trying to do these things.
Has the reviewer pool changed much?
Huh?
Given how compared to what a lot of at least political sciences recently, that it's hard to find.
I don't know.
Has it become different?
I'm a slow publisher, so I'm at least the last person to ask about these things.
Sure.
So like, it does seem a little bit that way. I got to say, like, so like if you take somebody who's my generation, so I went to graduate school in the late 80s, there wasn't as much data back then. So sometimes I think the only reason the theory was kind of prized back then is because we didn't have as much data as we have now. Like if we had the data we had then and big computers, we would all be doing data stuff to this day. But when you think of people who are, like I was training at that time, then at least, theory was kind of reigning, at least in the econ departments. It was like, this is what we were good at. And that's gotten a little bit less over time. Like, so for some people, for example, like, we gave a Nobel Prize to, Nobel Prize was given to Banerjee and Duflo, for, so a lot of people will say, well, some people would say that this is not really economics because anybody could have done that. Like, the whole idea of just doing an RCT, people have done that many years, and just saying that we can do it in economics, that's not super, like a huge innovation. But of course, on the other side, it's saying, well, they did it, and other people are doing it too, so being influential, it's good. And, it's always good to figure out new ways of trying to test, validity, that'll always be an issue. So, I don't know, people who are trained in my generation, we kind of read people who, like, if you read people in the 60s and 70s, those people were like, it was like the moon landings. It was like people had big, crazy, wild ideas. They had a lot of imagination. Whereas I think that if you look at a lot of papers which are written today, they're all about like, I'm going to figure out this little problem, but super nail it down. So I think it's good, of course, that validity standards are higher, but I think the flip side is that people kind of get jobs with sometimes a very super limited thing. Like you think, well, you figured out that little patch, but like, what if I care about other patches? What about I think about a cap of the forest or something? So that's the trade-off. And I don't know. One of my colleagues at Chicago is this economist, Robert Lucas, is well-known economist, got the Nobel Prize. He said, you shouldn't let the data beat you up too much. He said, and the idea is that really any idea doesn't match reality when you first have it. So if the first you have the idea and you think, is this true or something, it's not going to, So he's basically saying, like, get the idea to develop first before you kind of, test it right away. And this is true for anything. Like, if you have an idea for a paper, don't immediately go to literature and say, hey, has this been done? Is it, because, you're really comparing your half-baked idea with someone else's paper which has been there for 5 years or whatever, right? So you know, you've got to let your own idea develop, you know. And, you know, everyone else's papers are half-baked at 1.2, so it's just not a fair comparison to compare your half-baked thing with somebody else's finished thing, it's just not.
You gotta know when to stop baking, and then
Yeah.
when to turn off the oven.
Yeah.
If you wait too long and then it fails, 2 years later,
Yeah,
you'll lose
yeah, exactly.
precious time. Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know, I like, I don't know. I do things which fail all the time, it doesn't bother me. And so, I mean, I mean, but I don't know, it's hard to know. I mean, it's hard, that balance is an issue, which is like, I do, like I talk to my son about this all the time. I said, like, if you look at 60s, 70s, people like Herb Simon or political scientists, then they thought we're going to have a new theory of X, period. You know, we have a new theory of power or something like that. You look back and think, what the heck does this even mean? Like, it's some incredibly vague thing, but at least they tried. You know, they were thinking that the point of what we're trying to do is to think of big theories, big explanations, think about how the world works, period. Not about, like, the effect of bed nets on malaria or something like that. You know, nothing's wrong with that, but, you know, so I don't know.
We needed that. It's just like, it's not really like compensated. Like, anywhere near the level that, like, more like
Yeah.
whatever feasible man in the world.
Yeah.
These days, and I don't know.
And it's hard to know. I mean,
Like, will we just dry out the well?
yeah. I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, there's new data coming out all the time, and there's definitely cool things you could do with it. And, you know, I don't want to rain on that parade because it's a great parade. I mean, I think it's great. And I mean, I don't know. I just feel like, it's hard to know. Some people would say that what this groups of the 60s, 70s did was just crazily ambitious and like just didn't mean anything. You know, a lot of people criticized. I remember one of my friends in sociology.
Some of it is wrong.
Huh? Yeah, right.
Things that
Yeah,
are
yeah.
ambitious are all not wrong.
Yeah. Just
Fully
like
capable of being wrong.
yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I don't know really, but yeah, we'll see. Things come and go, I guess. But I don't know. Yeah. Maybe if I were a graduate student now, I'd be doing like, you know, causal inference stuff. I don't know. I don't know if that's. I think some of it. Sometimes I think about it also with respect to the whole culture in general. I've got to say this too, like 60s, 70s moon landing, you know, new technology, all this kind of stuff. And there's new technology now, but if you look at the culture, like we have, you know, almost every blockbuster movie is a Marvel movie. You know, we have a lot of recycling. You know, much more now than there was in the 70s and 80s. You know, and pop music. Like if you look at the difference between pop music in 1980 and 1940, it's huge. The difference in pop music in 2020 and 1980 is not huge. You know, you can almost take 80 songs and play it now and people think this is great. Whereas no one would listen to a 1940 song in 1980, you know? And so sometimes I think that's related to this whole thing somehow. I don't know. You know, it's just, maybe it was the 60s was a particularly unusual time. Some people say it has to do with the fall of the Soviet Union, the whole whole ideas of idealistic kinds of states, you know? You know, we've just sort of given up with the idea of making a better society or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's also it's unclear to me how much like it's just we've turned cultural production to a more of a profit motivated thing, or if it's just like the profit motivated outputters of cultural products have just become better at like the algorithmic way of producing content is just like so effective.
Exactly, it's
So
possible,
if you,
right?
If you have ambiguity in the 90s about what people like, and then you by accident produce more original
No,
things,
exactly right.
you
No,
know, there's no uncertainty. It's just like I know this will work. But then it becomes self-reinforcing because we don't offer people things that aren't on the algorithmic equilibrium path. But like,
No,
you never
exactly.
get anything out of it, right?
No,
So-
absolutely. I could totally agree with that. I mean, the Marvel movies, a lot of them are really good movies.
Yeah.
And so you might say that they really figured out how to make good movies.
Yeah.
But they did it so much that it's sort of crowding out every other kind of accidental, like, good idea.
Manufacturing cultural reference.
Yeah, exactly. Some people say it has to do with the internet. Like, music now has to compete with a lot more music than it used to. Like, in the 80s or something, you'd listen to music on the radio. It wasn't like you'd then go to Spotify and find all the other things that are similar to it. But now you can do that, right? So it's really hard to break out when you're competing not with just like your current competitors, but the Beatles and people like that, right? You just, you know, how can you break out of that? Some people say that. I don't know.
There's that famous line from the Netflix series, which is like, our biggest competitor is sleep. That's what they said. We're competing with everything that draws your eyes. You know,
Right.
the only biggest thing that draws your eyes is sleep. That's what they say though, it's like,
Is what I would
But also not because they can make TV shows about video games.
Some people,
Make video games
watch
about
TV
TV
while they
shows.
play video games.
They actually made a TV show video game. It's
Yeah.
the Black Mirror thing where you click what you want to
Oh,
do.
right, right,
I mean, there's all, yes.
but the big thing that's did last year was buy a gaming studio with the plans to release games through Netflix.
Oh, interesting.
That's like a whole other.
Because that's how they're gonna draw more time.
I hope it's not
Players
like
Netflix is also
Good
not,
luck.
they're not in a big place right now.
Financially?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always bumps and bumps and stuff. Yeah, they're like, they just laid off a bunch of people.
Oh, well, unrestrained growth is impossible forever.
Well, I mean,
And that's
they,
been possible for the last like 5 years.
Yeah, but they already have everything. What are they gonna do? Try to like get families to each have a subscription? That's right.
Well, I guess,
they're about to do that. Actually. They're about to.
Yeah.
They've known for a long time. They have, well, not just known, but they've like been able to pinpoint.
Yeah, they're gonna become the least popular.